Right, just a quick one. Whether you are a massively experienced and well-established property developer already, or maybe you're a new or aspiring one, either way, you will know that it is really not easy to find viable opportunities to come up with the best scheme, the best design that's going to maximise the land value and fully de-risk things for you, and then to go on to get the very best planning permissions as quickly as possible. But however experienced you are, you will know that that is not an easy thing. I have put together a super detailed scorecard based on my 40 years experience in this industry, reverse engineering everything that I've learned, including lots and lots of mistakes over the years, and everything I've done to maintain, touch wood, 100% planning track record. I'm pretty sure there will be stuff that you don't know. Go and do that scorecard. Find out just how good or not your current process is, and I absolutely guarantee you will learn at least a little something, if not a ton. So it's bit.ly /MLA score, all in capitals. You can do the Millbank Land Academy scorecard. I absolutely guarantee you will find some interesting stuff, and it will help you get much better deals. Hiya, and welcome to this week's episode of Inside Property Development, where I'm going to be talking a little bit about land economics. Just last week, there were a couple of really interesting announcements from the government. First one was talking about fining developers for sitting on land once they've got planning permission, which I've got to tell you, honestly, doesn't happen. Now, obviously, if you're a developer, you will know that, but based on lots of the comments that I was seeing, there are people out there that obviously think that that is what happens. And, the whole point of the Inside Property Development podcast is that we're trying to foster more collaboration and understanding within the sector. So that's amongst developers, planners, architects, everyone involved in trying to get more good quality housing created, yeah? And whilst there is misinformation being bandied about and people not understanding how things really work, it's not helpful, right? Based on some of the comments I saw, it was like, wow, there are people, including some quite apparently senior people looking at their experience and qualifications on LinkedIn, that really don't get it. So I thought it would be useful to just do a real little high level explanation of some stuff around land values and development economics, right? Before that, have a little look at this chart up on the screen. Now, if you're on listening to this rather than watching it, then you're better off going to watch it on YouTube. And if you are watching it on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe and give us some comments and send it to your friends, right? But anyway, this chart was the most up-to-date one I could find. So this is by the HBF, the Home Builders Federation, which basically shows the number of SME developers and smaller house builders in the UK. And as you will see from the chart, the peak was in 1988, when there were about 12,500 smaller house builders and developers, yeah? Now this chart goes up to 2017. I'm sure there'll be a more recent up-to-date chart. I couldn't find one. I'm just doing this really quick shooting from the hip, really, because it was quite timely, and I thought that it's important to get this information out here. So in 1988, there were about 12,500 smaller developers and house builders. Down to 2017, when this chart goes up to, there were about 3,000, yeah? Now, interestingly and completely coincidentally, 1988 was the year I built my first single new build house. Yeah, so I have been in the industry since before then, and obviously from then, knowing exactly what happened. And basically what happened from 1988 onwards, planning started getting increasingly difficult and complex, yeah? So up until that point in time, being a good little regional builder or developer was enough. Find some land, get planning permission relatively quickly and easily, build some houses, sell some houses, yeah? On to the next one, and then slowly, hopefully grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger. But from 1988, a whole load of stuff in planning changed. I could bore you with all of the detail of exactly what changed, but that's not what this is about. But rest assured, things got more difficult. And as a result, being a good builder was not enough. You also had to be a planning expert. So what happened is slowly, the good builders either went bust or gave up, or actually got taken over by the bigger house builders, because it was the same for them. Planning got more difficult for everyone, and therefore the way that the big developers could get their hands on some land that they needed to keep feeding their business with was to buy up the little house builders and developers that actually had some land. Yeah, so as a result, that's why we went from 12,500 to less than 3,000, and now I don't know what the numbers are, but I can absolutely guarantee you it will be even less. And over the last few years, and currently, it would have got even worse, right? It's important that we understand why that is and how the whole process and system really works, because I personally, and even government, based on recent announcements, obviously recognise and think that rebuilding the SME house building sector is massively, massively important. I personally think it's the only way we're going to solve the housing crisis, right? The big developers, they've got their own model and the way they do things and need to do things, which is fine, but they're not going to build enough homes on their own. And in actual fact, I think that lots and lots of new, smaller developers, like there used to be in the old days, they'll help solve the problem, and as a general, I actually think they build much better stuff. Now, in order to understand why it's so difficult for SME developers and what the real issues are, have a little look at this drawing I'm going to do. So I'm literally inventing this and making it up as I go along. So let's say this is a site, and it's got a old warehouse in the middle, right? So it's previously developed land, it's a brownfield site, it's got a warehouse on the middle, it's got a whole load of concrete hard standings, it's in the town centre or on the edge of the centre, so it's the type of thing that we're all told we should be developing. So far, so good. Now, and this bit is the absolute key that a lot of people seem to not know or understand, yeah? So let's say that as a warehouse, if the person that owns this warehouse wanted to put it on the market, either rent it out or sell it to someone to occupy as a warehouse, could sell it tomorrow for £1 million. So 1 million is the existing use value, yeah? Now, my whole model is by focusing on off-market development opportunities, so things that aren't on the market, so I don't get involved in a whole load of stupid competition. So I find off-market sites, I secure them on sensible terms. Typically, I secure them on £1 option agreements, so I don't have to have loads of money out all over the place buying sites, yeah? And I then go away and add maximum planning value by getting permission for the best possible scheme, yeah? That way, I have de-risked the situation. I haven't paid too much to start with, and I've created some value before I start getting into the real tricky part of the process, which is building things and then hopefully selling them. Focusing on off-market sites and adding maximum planning value is basically how you de-risk development as much as you possibly can. That's what nearly all the big developers do. That's how they've managed to survive for so long. So we've got a site with an existing use value of £1 million. Now, this person could obviously sell that site for £1 million tomorrow. So if I'm going to incentivise them to sell to me or do a development deal, I'm going to have to give them an uplift. At the end of the day, that uplift is a negotiation, but let's just, for the purposes of explanation, let's call it 20%. Yeah? So existing use value plus uplift to incentivise them to sell equals 1.2 million quid. Yeah? 1.2. So that's basically my baseline, my hurdle, my target. That's the thing that I'm going to have to try to meet and beat in order to incentivise the landowner to sell, yeah? And that is basically the thing that really dictates what can and can't happen development-wise. Lots of these posts recently on LinkedIn about people talking about land banking and developers' profit and etc., etc. It's just missing the point. The thing that really drives the whole process is existing use values and being able to incentivise landowners to sell. So that's our baseline. Now, how do you work out what the land might be worth? Yeah. So let's assume, based on my knowledge and experience, I know or think that I might be able to knock that warehouse down and build, let's just say, 5 houses. Yeah. So remember, I'm just making this up as I go along. So I've got a pair of semis on the front. We stick a road down the side with a little turning head. And anyway, no one be telling me that turning head's wrong, it's not big enough, any of that stuff. I'm just trying to make a point, obviously, right? Then we could get another 3 houses out the back somewhere. I'm not trying to win any architecture or design awards with this, by the way, right? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses, yeah? So I'm just really, this is talking about existing use values, what drives development and how we value land, you know? So right, so I know or believe that I might be able to knock down the existing warehouse and build 5 houses on that site, right? So of course I need to know, well, what value will that generate? This is the way you work out land values, right? So I go away, I do all of my market research, and I work out that I could probably, if and when I've built those houses and got planning for them, I can probably sell them for about £1 million each. Yeah, just making numbers up, obviously, yeah, just to make the maths easy, yeah. So 5 times 1 million equals 5 million. Yeah, so the GDV, right? So the gross development value, the total value of all of those houses is 5 million quid. Now, of course, I can't sell them until I've built them. So I now need to go away and take into account all of my development costs. So obviously the biggest element of that is build costs. I've got all of my planning fees, all of my design fees, my SDLT, my community infrastructure levy, any section 106 contributions, more recently BNG contributions, maybe nutrient neutrality, water neutrality, a whole big other list of potential things that my development has got to pay for. Of course, finance costs, etc. Right? So there's a massive long list of things that the development that have got to be paid for in order to create the houses that I can then hopefully sell. Yeah? So just to make the numbers easy, I'm just going to lump them all into one. I'm going to call it total development costs. Yeah, and I'm going to say 3 million quid. Yeah, I'm just literally making numbers up. Yeah, so let's call it 3 million quid. Yeah. Now, I'm not doing this for fun as a business. I'm doing this to hopefully make a profit. Now, it can be fun if and when you know how to do it properly and everything goes well. And importantly, at the end of it all, I've hopefully created some nice homes for people that they can be happy in and I can be proud of, right? So whilst it can be fun and very rewarding, actually I've got to make a profit. And more importantly, any funders, lenders, they've got to see that the development is showing a sensible profit because they also need to make money and know that the thing is safe-ish and they're not going to lose money, right? So target profit margin, I'm going to call it, target profit equals 20% of GDV. 20% of GDV is the sensible industry standard minimum. There will be people that get desperate and get forced into doing it for less. Those people are among the many, many SME developers that have disappeared since 1988. Because basically what happens is planning's got so difficult, they've ended up having to try to buy stuff with planning because they didn't know how to do it for themselves. Stuff with planning is always super expensive because there's such an imbalance of the demand for stuff with planning, because people still want to build stuff, right? And the supply of stuff with planning, people basically end up bidding away their profit margins in order to do the deals and buy the sites, yeah? If you're buying something at less than 20% of GDV, it's like risky, and the lower your margin, the riskier it gets, yeah? Ideally, you want a sensible margin, actually higher than 20% of GDV, but 20% of GDV is a sensible industry standard, yeah? So 20% of 5 million quid, is obviously 1 million quid. Yeah? So, the way you value land is via a residual valuation. So, what you can sell the things for, minus what it costs to create them, minus your target minimum sensible profit margin, so 5 million quid minus 4 million quid, what's left over, i.e. the residual, is what you can afford to pay for the land. Going back here, as we can see, if the existing use value of the land is £1 million and the guy's going to want an uplift in order to be incentivised to sell, and I can only get it to £1 million, that is not a deal. I'm not going to be able to build any houses. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to buy the land. I can't build any houses. And that's basically it. That is how the industry works. So it's not developers being greedy that's driving this whole process. The thing that's really driving the whole process is existing use values and meeting and beating landowners' expectations. Yeah. On lots of these recent LinkedIn posts and things, there's been people jumping in, inferring or thinking that developers do get consent and land bank and sit on land and stuff like that. Trust me, they absolutely don't. It would be madness, right? It takes a lot of time and money in order to get planning permission. Planning permission now only lasts 3 years. The last thing you're not doing that for fun. You are getting planning permission because you want to build the things, or even if you are a land trader or a promoter, right? Now there's a whole nother big debate around that. I know people sort of think, oh, well, you shouldn't be able to do that and all the rest of it. Well, actually, I think that you should, because getting planning permission, remember that chart from the beginning? Lots of people are builders. They like to build. They're good at building. They want to be building. But actually, being an expert at planning and design and knowing your way around with all of this stuff and finding off-market deals, that's a whole nother completely different skill and area of expertise. So, it's only actually the big developers that can do that because they've got enough money, basically, and enough people to be able to do the whole thing. The little guys just can't do it. So there absolutely is a really important role knowing how to find off-market sites, negotiate them on the right terms, add maximum planning value, de-risk the whole situation, and then perhaps sell them on for a little bit of a profit to other house builders and developers and all the rest of it. Now, I do everything. I find the sites, I get the planning, and I build things. Going forward, I'm probably going to build a lot less, but still add planning value and sell stuff on. Why? Because I'm getting close to retiring and it is painful, stressful. I don't really want to be doing much of it anymore, but I do still want to help get good housing created. So if I can find sites and de-risk them for other people, then why would I not do that? Now, and if you think, well, that's wrong, people should be able to do that, well, fine. Let's make planning way super simple like it should be, and then builders and house builders can do it for themselves. But I've got to tell you, based on how things are, that is a long way off. So, that's how it all works. Now, if you think about it, just to make another little point, so that obviously deal doesn't work. Same site, warehouse in the middle, blah, blah, blah. Same existing use value, plus a premium, 1.2. That's still the figure I need to get to, right? But let's just say, if I'm better at planning, design, and what have you, and I know that I can get, let's just say the layout's nearly the same, but maybe I can make those, I can get 3 houses in there, but I can make them 3-storey, so I've got more square footage or whatever, and I can get, some slightly different ones out the back or whatever. So I have now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So it's a different thing, isn't it? So if I now do, so let's just assume they're all high value, same price or whatever. So I've got 6 times £1 million, right? So I've now got 6 million quid's worth of GDV. And my total development cost, what did I say last time? So obviously now I'm building 6 of them, not 5, so it's going to cost a little bit more. What did I say? I now said 3 million quid, so that was 600 grand each, so I'm now building them for 3.6. Total development costs 3,600,000. Target profit margin is still 20% of GDV, because remember that is the sensible industry minimum. And I've got to tell you, honestly, you really do not want to be going much below that. And the reason it's like the industry standard that's sort of accepted by, and ideally is what most banks and valuers want to see, is because they know that is the minimum that's sensible for everyone's arse to be covered if and when things go a bit pear-shaped, as they always do at some point. And in an ideal world, particularly in a market like now, when there's a whole load of uncertainty and who knows what's going to happen with the economy and interest rates and then values and costs, what have you, in actual fact, you'd want an even bigger profit margin on your deals, ideally. Yeah? But anyway, just to make the maths easy, let's assume it's 20% again. So we've now got a £1.2 million target profit margin. So 6 million quid minus 4.8 equals 1.2. Residual land value, 4.8, yeah, I have done that right. Right, so now, all of a sudden, I can meet the landowner's expectations. I can hopefully persuade them to sell at that price and turn it into a deal. So as you can see, so either way, I'm just maintaining my minimum sensible profit margin, right? I'm not making super profit margins here. I'm just being driven to try to do everything I can to maximise the land value, to beat the existing use value, and to get a deal done. Now, it's worth knowing that, of course, probably the biggest problem in development is, well, there's lots of big problems actually, but I'm just going to mention this. Production lag. Yeah? So basically what that means is the time from first identifying a site, negotiating the deal. Remember, I don't, not just going to agree it easily. I've got to go through all that whole design phase. I've got to come up with different schemes. I've got to value them up. I've got to negotiate with a landowner backwards and forwards, hopefully get them to eventually a point that they're going to agree. So that could be months. Yeah. I've then got to work up and submit a planning application. That will be definitely months, maybe even years. So this is a big part of the whole problem. I've then got to raise finance, mobilise, get geared up on site, demolition, decontamination in that example and all the rest of it, start building, and then hopefully eventually sell. So that could very easily be 2, 3, 4 years. So there is a massive production lag, but i.e. the difference in the time between I identify the site and I do all of my numbers until the time I'm actually trying to sell my houses, yeah? And so I've had to agree my deal and my numbers with the landowners today based on all of that. But if the market goes flat, or worse still, even down, and that GDV drops, yeah, and or development costs, remember part of which will be interest rates, so that's of course one of the things that's happened over the last few years. Big part of course will also be build costs. Over the last 3 years, build costs have probably gone up 30%. So that goes massively up. So I'm just going to, let's just say that was 5.5. And let's just say that was 4 million quid. And actually, things change a lot more than that, yeah? So those are only quite minor changes, yeah? As you can see, and I'm already contracted to do that deal at 1.2. Yeah, so as you can see, things don't have to change very much before it goes, what looks like it could be an all right deal is a completely terrible deal. And that's one of the reasons that many smaller developers either give up or go bust. So the whole point about all of this is the fact that it really isn't easy. We don't make super profits, and the thing that is driving the whole industry is existing use values and landowners' expectations, which is nothing really very much to do with us. All we're trying to do is deal with all of the complexities and costs of the planning system and hopefully build some nice homes for people, yeah? So that's how it really works. Now, just to sort of summarise for people that are out there doing this in terms of building homes for people or trying to build for homes for people. Hiya, right. The more observant amongst you may have noticed that something looks different. Basically, I'd forgotten to talk about one of the key bits here that I wanted to talk about. So I'm now recording this later and inserting it in to the rest of the podcast. So the thing I forgot to talk about, which was actually the main thing I was trying to get across, was around absorption rates. There's been lots of stuff on LinkedIn and in the press recently about house builders land banking and fining them for sitting on sites. It just doesn't work that way. So I thought I'd explain what it's all about and how it really does work. So this whole thing about absorption rates is basically about how quickly you can sell houses at a sensible price, because we all know how supply and demand works. You make something super cheap, you're going to sell it super quick, you would hope. But that doesn't work with house building because of the way viability works and the whole thing around existing use values and viability. So just for example, yeah. So you'll remember from the previous bits that came before here, I explained development appraisals real high level and trying to beat existing use values. And I showed how even very slight changes in the end values and costs can make deals go seriously the wrong way very quickly. So this was the example I was using. So let's just have a little think. So for example, right, when you're putting a development appraisal together, you go away, you do your market research, you see what similar things are selling for in the market at the value at the moment, right? So what's the market value? Now, based on my little example that I made up, we're saying that we had 6 houses that you could sell for £1 million. So the real market value is around 6 billion quid. Now, let's just say we knocked 10% off the price, so minus 10%. So we weren't worried about absorption rates. We just wanted to sell things super quick. That would give us a GDV of 5.4 million quid. The development costs would be still pretty much the same. Be a very slight saving in interest costs, obviously, because you're selling them quickly, but big drop in GDV. And remember, that's just a 10% discount as well. Development costs are going to stay largely the same. Your target profit margin obviously still needs to be 20% of GDV to be sensible and relatively safe and to be able to actually get funded. So the residual, what's left over, i.e. what you could afford to pay for the land, is now massively reduced. Now, if you remember, the existing use value of the site was £1 million plus a little bit of a premium to incentivise the landowner to sell, i.e. 1.2. So as you can see, by dropping the prices of things to get them to sell really quick, it just completely changes all the numbers and deals don't work. So when house builders are, selling at a certain rate, it's not so much that they just want top dollar. It's because the whole way the land economics works is if we don't get those values, you could never get land deals to work in the first place. So hopefully, and I've waffled on a bit and I'm a bit all over the place, but hopefully that makes it a bit clearer about this whole absorption rates thing works. You can't drop the prices of things too much, because you'll never get deals to work in the first place, let alone to leave yourself a sensible profit margin to actually get things funded, and hopefully, particularly if you're an SME developer, stop yourself going bust. This is really how development really works. So development's obviously a business, unless you're a housing association or a charity, or you've got free land. Most of us need to make a bit of profit and pay the bills, right? So development is a business, and business is about balancing risk and reward. Yeah. So in development, the risk is really, it's about how much time it's going to take, how much capital you need, and how much experience and knowledge you need. Yeah? And reward is, of course, how much money you can make and how much social value you can create, i.e. homes and nice places and environments for people, yeah? So that's basically risk and reward. And the way it works is this. So the further you get into the process, oh, not drawing that very well. I did tell you I wasn't an architect, right? The further you get into the process, so the further you get that way, the riskier it gets, but potentially, and only potentially, the higher the reward, yeah? Now, development really, this whole process can be broken up into three main areas, yeah? So everything starts with land, yeah? So that's the site, the building, the opportunity, the canvas upon which we, in conjunction with our fantastic professional team, brilliant architects, planners, and all the other experts we need, the canvas to which we add value, yeah? So everything starts with land. All of the massive value is added through good planning and design. So remember, it was that, knowing that I could get 6 houses, not 5 houses, just a really simple, silly example. And then at the end of that, you build things to either sell, that's the typical developer's model, build to sell, or maybe you're building them to refinance, to hold, to let, whatever. And I'm talking about residential here, although the principle for all development works the same, right? So these are the three main elements: land, planning and design, and build. Now, if you were to sort of look at how much value is created at each stage, there is massive value to be created at the land stage. So that's by finding the proper sites to start with, off market, so you don't get involved in stupid competition, bidding your profit margin away before you've even started. Yeah, so finding land, buying the right site, securing them on the right terms is key, right? Adding maximum planning and design value is like really the number one skill in property development, is knowing how to do that stuff. And then at the end of the process, actually building things, yeah, is, whilst really, you know, necessary and important, right? It's actually the bit where the least financial value is actually added, right? All of the and it's also actually a bit in a lot of ways, because you're stuck in the deal for longer. Yeah, whilst you're building the thing, could be, depending on how big it is, could be a couple of years, and you're then in the deal, you're committed to the deal. Market might change, you can't sell the things, it takes you a lot longer or whatever. You know, that is the riskiest bit. Yeah, so you need to get really good at the planning and design bit, because that's where all of the added value is. That's where you de-risk the situation, and then you get it to here, which is where either you or someone else can take over the deal and build it, right? So there is a lot to be said for knowing how to de-risk the whole situation. So, you know, there really is, you know, a need for people that can find sites and add proper planning value, good placemaking, excellent design, etc., etc., and then either build stuff themselves or sell the sites on or JV with the people that are then going to come and build them. But as things stand at the moment, as you would have seen from that beginning chart, just knowing how to be a good, fantastic builder wasn't enough, and actually still is no longer enough. So hopefully that helps and makes a little bit of sense. I know I've waffled on. I've literally just made this up as I've gone along, but I think it's important for people that, I have loads of excellent architects and developers and planners and all sorts of people on my podcast, and when I talk to them, I am always shocked at the fact that architects and planners don't seem to talk very much, if anything, about land economics and viability and development appraisals, etc. So it's important to know that this is what drives everything, and we have to know how to come up with the optimum scheme in order to make things work. And it's super risky, right? Because the numbers can change very easily, and if and when the numbers change, things can go wrong very quickly. So that's it. But that is the solution. Everything starts with land, and then adding maximum planning and good design value to it to de-risk the situation. Please do remember to like and subscribe and forward this to your friends, and give us any comments about maybe you got some questions, maybe you disagree, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in to Inside Property Development. Please remember to like and subscribe. Do join us every week, where we'll be speaking to house builders, developers, experts, planners, and everyone involved in trying to get more much needed housing created the right way. We'll learn together how we can collaborate rather than fight, and by working together we can all help create better places, spaces and homes, and a much more beautiful world.